On the 29th of September, 1833, the royal palace in Madrid was shrouded in a deathly silence. In the royal chambers, a 48-year-old man lay dying in his bed, his body ravaged by venereal disease acquired through countless sexual escapades. Ferdinand VI, King of Spain, died in the most humiliating way imaginable for a monarch. Ravaged by syphilis, a cruel consequence of a life devoted to the most perverse pleasures. His groans echoed through the palace corridors as doctors desperately tried to treat the ulcers that covered his body. The irony was cruel. A man who proclaimed himself a defender of Catholic morals and Spanish traditions was being consumed from within by the results of his own debauchery. But how did Ferdinand VI become the most depraved and despised king in Spanish history? To understand the moral decay of this monarch, one must go back to the beginning of his life and uncover the dirty secrets that forever stained the Spanish crown. Ferdinand was born on the 14th of October, 1784, in Spain, which was still one of the great European powers. The son of Charles III and Maria Luisa of Parma, he grew up in a corrupted palace environment where sexual intrigues and betrayals were more common than royal audiences. His mother, Queen Maria Luisa, was notorious for her numerous lovers, including the infamous Manuel Godoy, who effectively ruled Spain through his influence over the royal family. From a young age, Ferdinand showed troubling traits. By the age of 10, he already displayed extreme cruelty toward animals and servants. Contemporaries recounted how he tortured cats for amusement and forced servants to perform humiliating acts for his pleasure. His tutors, alarmed by such behavior, tried to reform him, but were systematically dismissed or transferred whenever they contradicted the prince's wishes. Ferdinand's upbringing was a complete disaster. Unlike other European princes who received strict intellectual education, he showed interest only in satisfying his basic instincts. He abandoned his studies, despised art and literature, and demonstrated shocking ignorance of state affairs. His sole passion was spying on the intimate lives of courtiers through holes he made in the palace walls. In 1806, Ferdinand married his cousin, Maria Antonia of Naples. This marriage was supposed to civilize him, but had the opposite effect. Confidential court reports revealed that Ferdinand subjected his young wife to humiliating and abusive sexual practices. Maria Antonia, an educated and devout princess, was traumatized by her husband's cruelty and lived a practically secluded life, avoiding his company as much as she could. The situation worsened sharply when Ferdinand discovered he could use his position to blackmail women at court. He began to extort court ladies, threatening to ruin their families if they refused to comply with his perverse desires. He developed an obsession with married women, seeing their seduction as a form of power over their husbands. Many nobles silently endured the shame inflicted upon their wives to maintain their status at court. In 1806, the premature death of Maria Antonia at age 21 aroused suspicions among court physicians. Despite the official cause being tuberculosis, persistent rumors pointed to poisoning or death from a broken heart due to her husband's constant abuse. Ferdinand showed complete indifference to his wife's death and cynically remarked that he was now free to pursue more interesting pleasures. The Napoleonic invasion of Spain in 1811 was meant to be a moment of national unity, but Ferdinand saw the crisis as an opportunity for personal gain. During the uprising in Iran that forced his father, Charles IV, to abdicate the throne, Ferdinand displayed astonishing cowardice. Rather than leading resistance against the French, he preferred clandestine negotiations with Napoleon and offered to surrender Spain in exchange for personal guarantees. The meeting in Bayonne between Ferdinand and Napoleon revealed the true nature of the future Spanish king. French witnesses described Ferdinand as a contemptible man, humiliatingly begging the French emperor and offering any concessions to preserve his privileges. Accustomed to dealing with cowardly kings, Napoleon was nevertheless impressed by Ferdinand's low character, and later noted that he had never met someone so vile on the throne. During his forced exile in the castle of Valençay, Ferdinand lived in luxury and idleness at Napoleon's expense. Instead of planning his country's liberation, he indulged fully in carnal pleasures, debauchery with French maids, organizing orgies with other Spanish émigrés, and contracted his first venereal disease from a local prostitute. Correspondences intercepted by French spies revealed his constant requests for female entertainment and his complete indifference to the suffering of the Spanish people. Ferdinand's return to Spain in 1814 was supposed to mark the beginning of a new era, but brought only the restoration of tyranny and depravity. One of his first acts was the reinstatement of the Inquisition, not out of religious conviction, but because inquisitorial courts gave him absolute power to persecute enemies and blackmail families. He used charges of heresy to force women to obey his wishes and promised forgiveness in exchange for sexual favors. His second marriage in 1816 to Isabella of Braganza was even dirtier than the first. Isabella, a Portuguese princess, only 19 years old, was literally sold by her family to solidify a political alliance. Ferdinand, now 32 and already ravaged by his excesses, subjected his young wife to even harsher abuse than his first spouse. The Spanish court under Ferdinand VI became a nest of corruption. He institutionalized a system of royal favors where state positions were granted to men willing to offer their wives or daughters to satisfy the king's desires. Ministers were appointed based not on competence, but on the beauty of their family's women. The king himself maintained an unofficial harem in the palace, including women who officially served as court ladies, but existed solely to gratify his lust. Ferdinand's sexual practices were perverse to a degree shocking even by the standards of the loosest era. Secret court documents revealed centuries later demonstrate his obsession with humiliating rituals and sadistic pleasures. He forced victims to perform degrading acts before other courtiers and turned intimacy into a public spectacle for his sick amusement. Matters worsened after Isabella of Braganza's death in 1818 under suspicious circumstances. Physicians noted signs of severe physical trauma and deep depression. Her last confessor later revealed she expressed a desire to die in order to escape unbearable suffering inflicted by her husband. Ferdinand again showed indifference to his wife's death, and only months later married a third time to Maria Josepha Amalia of Saxony. The new wife was only 20 years old when she was given to the depraved king. The marriage lasted just 2 years, ending with her mysterious death, fueling suspicions that Ferdinand literally killed his wives through physical and psychological abuse. In the 1820s, Ferdinand reached the peak of his corruption. He maintained dozens of mistresses simultaneously, including nuns whom he forced to break sacred vows through blackmail and threats. He developed a special obsession with virgins, offering generous rewards to those who brought him inexperienced young women. Desperate families sold their daughters to the king, preferring dishonor to extreme poverty. The political situation in Spain deteriorated rapidly. While Ferdinand indulged his vices, the Spanish Empire crumbled. American colonies proclaimed independence one after another, the economy collapsed, and society descended into chaos. The king himself remained utterly indifferent to national issues, caring only about satisfying his increasingly perverse desires. Ferdinand's fourth and final marriage, contracted in 1829 with Maria Cristina of the Two Sicilies, was a last desperate attempt to produce an heir. Maria Cristina was 23 years old and became the only woman to outlive Ferdinand. However, this was largely because he was already gravely ill at the time of the marriage. Syphilis, contracted from one of the prostitutes during his debaucheries, began damaging his brain and diminishing his capacity to inflict harm. Ferdinand's final years were a prolonged agony. The disease slowly destroyed his body, causing repulsive ulcers, constant pain, and progressive mental decline. Despite their efforts, doctors could not conceal the king's disgraceful condition. The palace whispered of the monarch's bleak state, a pitiful spectacle of physical and moral decay. In late September 1833, Ferdinand lay dying in his chambers, abandoned by nearly all. His former victims were dead or fled. Courtiers avoided him due to the foul stench from his sores. Even doctors came only out of duty. The man who once terrorized women was now utterly helpless, consumed from within by his own depraved choices. Death came on the 29th of September, ending one of the most shameful reigns in European history. Ferdinand died as he had lived, dirty and worthy of contempt. No sincere tears were shed at his funeral, only relief from a nation finally freed from its tormentor. His only legitimate daughter, the future Isabella II, inherited a shattered kingdom and a crown forever stained by her father's depravity. Ferdinand VI's legacy is one of the darkest in the history of the Spanish monarchy. In 20 years of effective rule, he transformed Spain from a great power into a backward and despised country. His obsession with carnal pleasures cost the nation its dignity, colonies, and world standing. Moreover, he set a terrible precedent, showing how absolute power can completely corrupt a person. Today, more than 2 centuries later, Ferdinand VI is remembered not as a king but as a predator who used the crown to satisfy the basest human needs. His story serves as a grim reminder that even royal blood offers no protection against the consequences of a life devoted to vice and cruelty. The most depraved king in Spanish history died as he deserved, alone, sick, and despised by all who ever knew him.